So I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker, Anthony Kiplimo. He is a developer advocate at Africa's Talking, and he is going to talk to you about Elarian, which is a tale of communication and data. And I am going to bring him up on the stage. A moment. I'll stop sharing my screen, bring him up. Hi, Anthony. How are you?
Hi there. How are you doing?
I am doing awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Just to provide just a bit of context, I work at Africa's Talking, but joined a new team called Elarian. It's a brand new product, and actually we're calling it a framework, so I'm excited to share more about it. AT has always been the communications company for Africa. If you need an API for SMSs, USSD voice, anything, we essentially can provide that. But we've always asked ourselves a bit of harder questions, like all this kind of data we're generating through SMSs and all the different communication channels. Like, what can we do with this? Can this actually become a new layer, a new tool for developers to really engage their users? Because that's at the end of the day, all of us, as we're building applications, as we're kind of doing all of this, it's really to engage customers and to provide value to the customer. So I'll share my screen in just a moment.
Awesome. And a clarification to the audience, AT is the abbreviation for Africa's Talking. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll share screen. Screen one. Oh, actually, I can share my Chrome tab, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, let me do that instead. Fantastic. Okay.
So I'll bring you to the stream and take it away, Anthony.
Thank you. All right. So just as I explained, we're going to be talking today about building better applications. And the reason behind this is, as developers, we are actually the engineers of touch points that customers have with businesses. And how can we make sure that we are delivering the right experiences for our customers? This is really the question. And this is why we built out Elarian as a customer engagement framework. So this adds us essentially a new layer in between your providers, so like Africa's Talking, Twilio, any of these kind of communication API providers, and we sit right on top of them, collating all the data from all these different spaces and kind of providing it in a customer-centric view. This is achieved through our dashboard, which hopefully I'll get to share a little bit about it towards the end of the call, or towards the end of my session. And what really we're trying to do here is, instead of viewing your data from the perspective of how many SMSs you sent, how many WhatsApp messages you sent, or how many phone calls you made in a day, you're now looking at each individual customer's interaction with your product and with your business. The next thing is we sat down and we're like, this is a developer tool. How are we supposed to kind of make this work? So what we decided to do is kind of like completely rethink how SDKs essentially work, all the way down to the protocol level. So our APIs now are no longer running on HTTP. We are running on our sockets, which is essentially a TCP connection. So imagine the way I like to describe it is like Africa's Talking or Twilio kind of makes phone calls. And kind of makes sense SMSs. It's a text, and then you get a text back from the person you sent the message to. But for Elarian, we try to reimagine it as a phone call, right? Where you're always on a phone call with Elarian. We are capturing all this data, and we are essentially providing real-time streaming of customer engagement data, and that's really something we find really cool. So we haven't let go of our native roots, right? We are still a communications company, and it's something that we're still quite proud of. And what we kind of thought through was providing not only the online channels, but now imagine combining the data between online and offline channels to better understand your customer. And keeping in mind that in Africa, most people are on offline channels. We text, we call, we use USSD a lot. How are we able to kind of aggregate this data into something meaningful, especially for the African, or rather really anybody, but primarily for the African market? And the first thing is we provide these core channels, which is messaging. Messaging now includes WhatsApp, Telegram, SMS, USSD voice, and payments. So one really cool thing about just to go back for a little bit, one really cool thing about how all of this works is that you can bring your own provider, right? We call it BYOC. Bring your own connector. So if you have Stripe, if you have M-Pesa, if you have Tcash, if you have any of these payment APIs, you can plug them into Elarian and essentially be able to kind of like manage that entire kind of like suite of connections. The next thing is kind of like digging a bit deeper into the framework itself. Like we already have a lot of these capabilities already on the Africa Stocking side, but for Elarian, what we really try to do is provide this unified customer data approach, or rather even views on the dashboard, and it allows you to see for each individual customer, how many messages have they sent you, how many WhatsApps have they sent you, how many USSD sessions, how many payments have they made to you. So you have this singular view of customers. And this over time, it may not be that useful at the same time to kind of view each individual customer. Imagine if you have a million customers, you can't keep on digging into each individual customer, but you can create tags. So our tags, what we call tags, is essentially segmentation. You're able to segment your customers based on their behavior. So, for example, you may want to find out how many people sent WhatsApp messages and also made a payment above $500, right? And all of this can kind of be presented as groups of customers that you can engage separately. So, for example, if you have a set of loyal customers, you can be sending them special offers. You can be sending them things like that instead of blasting it to everybody. And maybe they're not engaging with those messages and those offers. So it's kind of a really interesting way for developers from within the developer, where the developer is sitting, to really bring out a lot of these behavioral components to kind of customer interaction. The next thing is metadata. I'd like to think of metadata as kind of like a Firebase, right? A real-time DB on Firebase, right? It essentially stores unstructured data about your customers, so the extra information about them: are they male or female? What's their birthday? Their bank account details, or something like that. So you can kind of store all of these different pieces of information there. And the next thing is reminders. Reminders is really powerful. I think it's one of the things that we are really excited about in terms of what developers will be able to use it for. So what reminders essentially is a trigger system. So you can set triggers for very specific things. So if a client you collect over $1,000 from a client, you can set a trigger to be sending them very specific messages. They've crossed that threshold. If, for example, a customer hasn't paid back their loan, right? How do you instrument that collection, right? It's through so what we think the reminders feature is actually what's going to help us or help engineers kind of build this out. And these are oftentimes they take quite a bit of time to build out for yourself. And for us, what we feel is something that that will be really exciting is the speed at which developers will be able to essentially reach their customers and build software, right? I'll share a couple of GitHub repos as well, where one of the first examples, just to even prove to ourselves that we actually built something useful, was we built out a micro loan system with less than 200 lines of code, all on Elarian, no extra frameworks, just Elarian kind of managing the phone calls, the payments, and it uses most of the features that I've kind of covered here. Wallets is something very exciting, especially for any devs working in the fintech space. So what Wallets allows you to do essentially, it carries two concepts. One is the mini wallets. So whenever a customer makes the first interaction, we create a tiny wallet for them. So it actually behaves more as a ledger more than anything else, but an individualized ledger for each and every customer. And then on the other side of it, we have purses. So it's a funny name in some aspects where we call it a purse. But when we thought about it, we're like, you see, for wallets are often quite tiny. And you can only store so much in them. But women figured it out, and they have a whole bag essentially with all their stuff, different cards, and anything and everything can be inside the purse. And we thought that kind of represented what this what we actually have. So what the purse essentially does is that you're able to connect different payment providers, the different pay bills, and the different maybe Stripe accounts that you have, and it's within the Elarian system, it's seen as one thing. It also simplifies the process of you disbursing funds or collecting funds from different sources, which is something we think it was going to be quite useful, especially for guys in the fintech space. And then analytics is something that we definitely wanted to create a dashboard that's way more useful than what we had previously had at Africa Stalking. So one of the problems that we kind of saw was that, developer, what normally would happen is after maybe a period of maybe every quarter, you'd have to export the data and send it off to your finance team or your data science team to kind of like extract insights out of it. And we asked ourselves, why would that happen? Can't we kind of provide this functionality for developers directly on the dashboard? You can still export the data, but it's much more useful to you. But it's where the data is being collected is the same place you're analyzing the data as well. And what we are able to do is two key things. So we created a visual builder. So for the non-technical people who are going to be interacting with the dashboard, which is there's a high chance there might be one or two people, they're still able to kind of like, specify, I want data from customers who've performed, we've engaged in the past 2 weeks, who've done these particular actions. So it's a simple visual builder versus, and then we also added the ability to write SQL directly on the dashboard, so that maybe if you want to do very much more complex queries on the data, you're not limited to the visual builder itself. You can actually build out very robust SQL statements on the dashboard itself. And then the last thing is geo-distribution. I won't talk too much about this, but essentially what we're trying to do is, it's a feature that's coming, but what essentially we're trying to do is make sure that all the data that you're generating is actually is data compliant. All the data policies, GDPR, the new one in South Africa, we are trying to make sure that all the data kind of is safe and is following the law in the right way. So these are just short visual representations of what unified customer data means, and hopefully it also provides a bit more clarity into what the framework is trying to achieve. So on my right, I'm one of those guys. I have to think through, is it right or left? So on my right, we have a couple of channels here. So telco services, the SMSs, the traditional stuff that we are kind of really good at. And then we have WhatsApp, Telegram, Messenger. Well, we'll be adding in Instagram events, so you can be able to know if somebody liked a photo on your Instagram page or something like that, Facebook and the web using Google Analytics. So we're able to capture all these different events around an individual customer. And we're able to kind of for each individual customer, we have this complete record of your interaction with them from the beginning up until this moment. And I think this becomes very powerful when you want to make very specific decisions about maybe if a product isn't working too well. It's easier for you to know once you kind of have the engagement data, payment and engagement data in one place, and you're kind of like, okay, are we actually making money? Are users actually paying for our services? Are users actually engaging us on WhatsApp, more on WhatsApp than on USSD? Maybe we need to kill the USSD project. Right, it becomes a lot easier to make these decisions. And then tags, just as I kind of mentioned, once all this data has kind of been pulled in, you want to understand which are the different segments in my client base or my customer base, and this is what tags allows you to do. So you can tag each individual customer as they come in, or tag them as you do your analysis. The next thing is the metadata. Just as you can see, it behaves very similarly to a real-time DB and NoSQL DB, but we designed it specifically to be holding data around the customer. We wanted to make sure that everything about your customer is in one place, and you don't have to talk to too many DBs or talk to too many services to kind of achieve any particular result that you're looking at. So one of the last things, I don't have a diagram for it, but something we are building out and will be probably coming pretty soon is our serverless tech, which is a lab we're calling it fragments. So what fragments are is like sometimes the little pieces of code that you don't want to actually have on your existing code base, you want it to live somewhere. And that's what Elarian fragments allows you to do. Essentially, it's serverless, just providing that serverless functionality for devs. So I'm super excited to kind of share with you guys as well once that comes out. Yeah, so we are working with Oakley, a company called Oakley. It's on part of the AT family, and the reason behind this is to train developers on how to essentially take advantage of the Elarian platform. So we're super excited. We're going to be announcing the program pretty soon. So excited to kind of like share this with you guys, with the community rather, once it's out. So just to kind of like summarize and bring everything home, our goal with Elarian is to allow operation and business teams to make key decisions on their customers, much faster. And the second thing for us as well is bringing developers closer to the business. Many a times it always feels like the development team and the commercial teams are like speaking completely different languages. Yet we are all trying to serve the same customer. We're all trying to streamline what that looks like, and really provide value to our customers. So like this Elarian is essentially trying to bring development speed, improve the development speed, bring the developer much closer to the customer, or rather to the business itself and the commercial teams, because now you're making decisions together as you move forward. And also providing the like really powerful analytics that allows you to better understand your customer and also better understand what essentially build software much better going forward. So we have a Slack community. I'll share the links on the chat, and also our community page, so community.elarian.com, and that's where we are kind of like hosting a lot of our virtual events. Yeah, super happy to see you guys join in once some of the events are live. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, I'm open for questions. I'd love to answer any questions guys may have around what the platform is. If I have a few more minutes, I'd love to actually show something around
Sure.
the dashboard.
Just a question for you, Anthony. For
Yeah.
those who do not know, what is USSD?
Oh yeah. So anytime, so how USSD works essentially is it's a code you dial on your phone, right? So *333# right, or something like that. And what we essentially provide is the ability for you to code your own menus. So it typically it's used by the telco to provide telco services. So for example, if you want to check your balance, if you want to maybe make even an M-Pesa transaction, USSD is kind of like the key thing. And the reason it's very popular is because you don't need data for it to work. And it's something that for us, we've always felt like it's still going to remain a very important technology in Africa, at least for the next 10 years. Because there's so many things you can do with it. You can build microfinance systems. You can, especially anything that doesn't need a UI can be on a USSD. And I think that's something really cool. One of the things we've been exploring this year has been using USSD for OTP. Yeah, because it's actually really, really seamless, right? If you think about it. Because what you want to verify is the phone number. And by default, when you dial a USSD code, you're giving the telco your phone number. So it's much simpler, much faster, and removes the hassle of you having to copy and paste into different spaces just to get verified on something.
Awesome. And also for our users in Kenya, we have this mobile payments system called M-Pesa, which sort of ties my account to my telco provider and allows me to send money from one user to another. And we have so many agents to say where you can withdraw, deposit, make transactions, make payments for your bills. And USSD as well is an interesting platform, mostly also for the whole African community. I guess it's not in every country where internet has reached. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also just to clarify, so Elarian is a customer engagement platform, so based on analytics on through the WhatsApp and SMS voice, right?
Yeah.
Is this legal to sort of monitor users' messages, voice
Yes.
calls?
So one of the really cool things is that we are not actually reading your messages, right? We're keeping count of the messages that were sent. So we are not trying to kind of scoop into people's kind of messages and the kind of interactions they have with the business. What we're more focused on is like how many times, for example, does a user interact with you on WhatsApp, right? Because I know so many teams end up building features that are not that useful. All right, you have a WhatsApp bot that nobody uses, and if you think about it, not that many people like using WhatsApp bots, right? Like they're not that friendly, right? It's definitely something that we are not snooping into people's data. We're actually just collecting, we're keeping record of the interactions and the payments. Yeah.
Okay, and a naive question: can we start a crypto coin on Elarian, maybe?
Yeah, dude, it's like we're actually quite excited to see what devs will end up building on this because we've seen a few interesting implementations that devs have built on the platform. Haven't seen anything on crypto, but payments is something that we're seeing is definitely something big there. What you can try to do, I guess, is instead of building a crypto on it, I guess you can create an exchange for guys on USSD, buy crypto on USSD. That'd be fun to see.
Awesome. That's an interesting use case. Yeah. And you had a small bit of presentation left. I think we have a few more minutes, about 5 minutes left.
For sure.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I've just shared my screen. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, so just to show that we are still a good family with Africa Stalking, even as we build this product, you can actually sign in with your Africa Stalking account. And what we're trying to do is provide that backwards compatibility with Africa Stalking. So the accounts will be pretty much the same, and you can pull in your, like if you have channels, a USSD code, a voice number on Africa Stalking, you can easily pull it into Elarian. So as it crunches some data. One of the key things we wanted to provide on this dashboard was high level simplicity. So you're able to see everything all at once versus a dashboard where you have to make 57 clicks for you to get one specific thing. So organizations are essentially applications, right? So we try to think about it in the sense that it's not just an app; it's actually a whole organization running on the platform, right? You can see your customer data here. You can manage various channels. You can generate different types of API keys and create different types of apps even within your organization. So it's something that we are quite happy about. Yeah, so the first thing you kind of see in the dashboard is engagement, and you can actually see how many times people have reached out to you on all these different channels: Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, voice. You can see how many phone calls were made, and then you can also see your customers. So you can also see the customers in terms of how many customers are engaging with me on SMS, how many customers are engaging with me on Telegram. Like you can begin to see that simple overview of what's going on the platform. But this is a tab that I'm always excited about whenever I'm doing anything on the platform. And as I was mentioning about the querying and and kind of like analyzing data, what we have here is we provide three default queries: activities. So activities is like all the activity from Google Analytics, the Instagram API, and all these different spaces, right? You're able to pull it in. Even your Android app can send in events to Elarian. And then the messaging stuff is just around SMS, WhatsApp, and stuff like that. And then payments now, as the word kind of implies. So one of the things I was talking about, which is creating queries. So I can imagine that the data is populated here, and you can begin to add in different types of queries. So you can say, I want an app ID of something, something, something. I can add another field and say, I want a specific customer number, 07, something, something, and keep on going like that, right? Like as much as you, literally as much as you want. Especially if it's helping you kind of like find a customer segment that's useful to you. You can save the query. Let me call this Prisma, and it will be available for you here as well. So it's saved as a custom query. The really cool thing is like if you're like I don't want to do this, or your data science team is on this and they're like we want to really explore this data, we essentially provide this SQL engine, so you're able to quickly figure out select custom. So it does all the stuff for when you're building the query visually. It's actually writing SQL that's being sent back to kind of fetch the data. But if you're like really keen on getting very specific things, you can actually get really deep into the platform itself. Yeah, so I'm just encouraging more guys to kind of check it out as we kind of figure out a lot of different aspects of the platform, and as we develop more content around the platform, it's really nice to have as many developers test it out as possible. Awesome.
Awesome. One final question on the whole query builder. Does it provide some level of auto completion? Because yes, I may be a developer, but who knows? I may make one typo that maybe I may spend a whole day trying to debug and not figure out what is wrong.
Oh yes, we do support. So all the data that's in your DB, we are able to autofill for you. So you barely need to like write too much. Just know your selects, where that's what you need to know. Everything else can be easily autofilled, and that should be quite helpful in terms of productivity.
Awesome. That's a really interesting tool, and I hopefully people in the chat are also getting ideas. Rama Design. I'm probably butchered that name. So yeah, thank you so much, Anthony. See you next time. Yeah.
Peace.
Peace.